destroy the middle, it's a waste of time. From the perfect start to the finish line. And if you're still breathing, you're the lucky ones. 'Cause most of us are heaving through corrupted lungs, setting fire to our insides for fun, collecting names of the lovers that went wrong, the lovers that went wrong. We are the wild youth.
Hi everybody!
Hi everybody!
How are you all doing? I mean, obviously it's trying times and we're all stuck at home, but hopefully you're all doing as well as can be expected. And
well, we're stuck at home as well, which is even less usual for us.
Yes,
and,
definitely.
I think just like everybody, we are still training a little bit at home, and like everybody, we wonder how to make the most of it. And
so we were chatting about things that athletes can do during this complicated time.
So sorry, there is not going to be a fire, and I mean, you could actually open a box of marshmallows if you want.
If you're lucky enough to have any marshmallows in your cupboard right now. But we decided to have this non-fireside campground chat.
I think we chose the subject of the adventure state of mind. What is adventure? Usually you think strong muscles, physical performance, risk-taking, like, you know, Captain America, Spider-Man, saving the world.
Yeah, that's at least what I'm aiming for.
Are these people, are they born adventurous?
Or do you, you know, through conditioning and social influence,
I'm using Captain America, but clearly wasn't born an adventurer.
Exactly. Captain America definitely wasn't an adventurer.
But can you be genetically modified, or are you, I mean, is there a gene of adventure?
Caroline, she started out life as, well, as a competition climber. Before that, lots of other sports.
Yeah, I would never say I grew
pony
up,
riding,
I grew up
tennis.
A normal little girl. I definitely have this first life where I was clearly an accomplished sport climber, as I had won a World Cup.
Yeah.
And I took a turn in my life, and the turn only happened because I met James.
I guess you never really know when these moments are going to happen, or going to show themselves. And for you, it wasn't necessarily a decision. Okay, now I'm going to stop this.
You never know when you're going to meet your husband, do you?
Now I'm going to stop this and do that. It was more like I'm feeling bored almost by this way of life, and naturally you start moving into other things.
I really didn't have the vision for a life of adventure, and I only took that step of going into trad climbing, which is clearly riskier climbing, because I was holding your hand.
And then you found the magic of it. And I mean, I don't know whether the magic that you have is the same magic as I have, but yeah, it's definitely something.
So this is Jackals, and it's one of my very first hard trad route.
Yeah.
At the time, I knew pretty much not at all how to place a trad gear, and so
E86B.
Yeah,
I mean, not that means anything to anybody, even the trad climbers amongst us. But basically, it means that it should be relatively easy climbing, but pretty dangerous.
But it wasn't that easy climbing, like 70 plus 80.
Something like that, yeah.
And you have to play some small fiddly gear, and it's really run out. So that gear James had showed me, but I clearly, I wasn't, you know, you have to tug on the gear to see if it's holding, and just that little tug wasn't holding. So clearly I wasn't placing my gear well enough, so I replaced it 3 times. Luckily I had a lot of endurance. And the 3rd time I basically didn't pull on it, so it wouldn't come out. So
ignorance is bliss.
It's clearly a comfort gear. There is no way it would have held if I had fallen. But in theory, the one below that you can see behind my leg should hold and should have kept me off the water.
Yeah.
And I think this is about the moment where I realized what there was in trad climbing that you couldn't find in sport climbing.
The real magic.
I think the fear, the only way to handle the fear is to focus even closer. I think it's super similar to the stress of competition climbing. The only way to handle it is to just like this really tunnel vision and really live in the instant, and you only focus on what you're doing and the placements you're putting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like a giant game of 3-dimensional, really cool chess.
With a little bit of emotion.
So contrary to Caroline, I kind of grew up doing some of this stuff. I mean,
this is so arrogant.
I was born an adventurer.
Born so courageous.
For as long as I can remember, I've always loved to do these extreme sports. Sports with big sensations, and I can't really tell you why that is, but I just enjoyed them so much. I definitely tried other sports, but it was really skateboarding, mountain biking, just being an idiot and jumping out of windows with an umbrella, trying to have your homemade parachute, that sort of stuff.
Worked?
When I was a kid. A little bit. Not very well. If the umbrella was big enough, then yeah, maybe.
Or maybe simply you were too stupid as a kid.
Maybe, as well. And maybe jumping out of a window with an umbrella didn't help the development of my neurons. But anyway, I was doing lots and lots of sports like that, and then I found climbing. And climbing for me pretty quickly became doing these very, very dangerous routes on the gritstone, which is the rock type near my home. Basically going out, practicing the moves with the safety of a top rope, which is a rope coming down from the top of the cliff. So you practice the movements, you figure out how the gear goes. It's almost like you try to take the level of danger of the route down to a level that you feel comfortable. So you can practice as little or as much as you like, and eventually you try to do it from the bottom to the top, protected by whatever gear you find along the way. Now on the gritstone there's not much gear, or it's often very, very bad. So a lot of the time this gear was placed just for confidence, really. But I guess I also had so much confidence in myself that I really didn't think I was going to fall off. Or at least I had no idea of the actual real consequences of,
so you might not really be risk management.
I don't think it was necessarily risk management. I think there was definitely a lot of ignorance at that stage. I mean, I was young. I was, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and pretty much all 16, 17, 18-year-old guys are idiots. And definitely the more you do and the better you are at something, the more confidence you get and the more you start to believe that you are some kind of Superman.
I think there's definitely this balance moment where either everything goes right and your confidence gets high, but your skill gets high as well, or something goes wrong and it just all crashes down.
Yeah, there were definitely some moments where I thought, I can't really fall off these things. Until one day, well, that didn't quite happen anymore. And suddenly you come crashing back down to earth. But anyway, the funny thing with the way I approached trad climbing was with this very organised, logical method. And so even though people from the outside might look at it as a really crazy, extreme thing to do, for me it was actually pretty safe and secure, and there wasn't really that much unknown. And so I don't even really know with hindsight whether I would have called myself an adventurer. Yes, I was doing something dangerous, but I was always doing something dangerous, and so that danger became almost like a daily routine to me. And I think when something becomes so normal,
danger alone doesn't
I don't think you
adventure.
can have adventure in it.
Because you don't get out of your comfort zone, even if your comfort
Maybe
zone
that's
is
it.
very strange for
Maybe
people.
adventure is moving away from your comfort zone. For me, there was definitely a turning point, and that was meeting Mark and spending time with him in Chad, and really seeing through his eyes what was so special about going to places like that.
So there's still clearly an element of mentoring. Just like I held your hand, it's actually Mark Sinnott who brought you into full adventure zone. So what was so special actually about...
What was so special about Chad?
Why did Mark go there?
It was quite funny. On the trip, Alex Honnold was constantly referring to Mark as this modern explorer. And at the time, I didn't really pay too much attention to that. But looking back, it's so true. What Mark loves is to go to these faraway places on the other side of the world. Sometimes he's heard, whispers of them through his network of contact. And I've been on some since with him where the gamble, hasn't quite paid off, and we've travelled halfway around the world to sit in a tent for 2 weeks in the mist and rain.
That's true, actually, yeah.
But on this trip in Chad, it definitely really 100% paid off.
Well, when I was young, I got into climbing. When I was a teenager, I was reading magazines and I saw images of rock towers. When I realized that there were these spires out in these remote places, I had this super strong feeling that was kind of my destiny in life. The Aneti Desert in Chad is a pretty obscure place. I don't think James and Alex knew what they were getting into, and realistically, I didn't know what I was getting into. Someone said that we had covered 400 of the 800 kilometers so far. We're in the second vehicle, so we're just eating dust.
So when you sign up for a trip with Mark, you know that it's going to involve some kind of crazy location, some kind of crazy scene. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty where you don't really know if you're going to get there.
Today we're going to keep driving across the desert. It'll be bumpy.
I never expected in a million years that the way that you would get to the Aneti was just by randomly driving across the desert for days on end without any roads.
Just the stories that he comes out with. Has this reputation of, being able to go to fairly inaccessible places and always have a bit of an adventure.
It wore on us, and we're starting to think, God, I really hope this is worth it, and you're also starting to wonder, how is there going to be anything out here? Then you turn a corner and you look off in the horizon and you're like, okay, there it is, there's the promised land. My goal all along has been to hopefully find towers like this that people haven't climbed before and be the one who pioneers the first ascent. And for whatever reason, I absolutely love climbing these things.
So, which tower do you want to climb today?
What happens once you have a family is that you start thinking more and more about the impact that it would have if something happened to you. The climber in me and the adventurer that wants to go off and do all these crazy trips, and they're always going to be risky. It's pretty hard to find the balance, but I'm trying. That's kind of like my struggle, and it's what I'm working on right now in my life.
I think I would call Mark like a modern explorer. He's coming to Africa bringing one book that's a biography of Marco Polo. I think that's so telling.
Climbing with Mark has been really, really good for me. He has a bit of a reputation of being able to go to these fairly unknown places which usually turn out to be a little shitty, but still have an amazing time and come back with non-climbing stories and adventures that are worth more than any climbing ever could be. I think when you're young, you find yourself in situations that are just idiotic and out of control. This. Sometimes I still get a bit carried away, which is great when you have people like Mark who can kind of rein me back in a little bit. His career's been super long, so obviously he's doing something right to still be successful in the game. These are all things that I would really like to emulate.
Oh my God.
I think that there was one single feature which really stood out to everybody on the team.
Formation, which is basically a tower and an arch. The most unbelievable and unlikely piece of rock that you could imagine. Unfortunately, it happens to be located super deep in the Aneti, about as far into it as you can get. wasn't really clear whether we would be able to make it that far. There was some problems with the drive, some difficult terrain that we would have to get through.
Finally, we made it down here, and it's safe to say it was a very, very good decision because this thing's amazing.
Is basically X-rated climbing. I find myself in a situation where I'm not even willing to belay somebody on something because it's that dicey. Getting up high, like several hundred feet above the desert floor, and then taking in the 360-degree panorama. You feel the intensity of where you are kind of just wash over you. Would really be psyched to explore some more around here. I mean, there's towers everywhere we look. It's basically an unlimited bonanza. I'm already looking forward to my next trip. It's gonna happen someday. Maybe I'll come here with my family.
I think Chad was definitely the moment where the climbing itself started to become a little less important, and the place and the experience began to become really enticing for me. So I guess at this point we should probably try to actually define adventure, which is going to be a big task.
It's the opposite of repeating the same task. If you want to go for an adventure, you have to step into the unknown, and so obviously this is relative to you. Yeah. We keep talking about physical things, but realistically adventure has nothing to do with physical activity.
Yeah, adventure can take so many different forms. For us, adventure would be coming and working in the office for a day or a week or a month.
And it would definitely be risk-taking for sanity.
Yeah. It might sound like something that we're just saying as this throwaway comment.
But it's something we know nothing about, and that would be new for us.
Having to deal with all those decisions and deadlines,
something I would be scared
and pressure, so much responsibility.
But I think even if in this adventure of Chad, you were still not leading in a sense that you had somebody to rely on.
Yeah, it was Mark's trip, so I could always, I could always fall back on Mark's experience. It was always his security blanket.
Yeah, the next step is the big adventure is the adventure that you choose.
The ultimate adventure is something that you don't know but you choose yourself. But obviously,
and not just
simply because you don't know anything about it,
and
choosing it yourself is already difficult in the beginning.
And something that wouldn't be just a gamble. Obviously, I can say tomorrow I want to go swimming between crocodiles. It's an adventure, but it's reckless.
Yeah. At some point, adventure needs to be maybe based on experience or at least some sort of education. So you're not just blindly.
I think if you want the right... If you want to be risk managing, then you need to be aware of the risks. And if you're a beginner at something, there's no way you know what you're doing.
When too far is really too far.
Anyway,
it's complicated, isn't it?
So I think there's a moment in my life where I stepped onto my big adventure too.
Yeah.
And that was on the Wapiti. Because
definitely.
For one of the very first times, I really questioned what makes me dream. I never started climbing for the danger. If you love life, you don't want to die until you're 8 years old. And I have a great life, so I really don't want to die. My definition of risk 5 years ago would be very, very different from my definition of risk today. This is really the influence of James, because he's the opposite of me. He's brought my definition of risk a little bit further. If I just keep on accepting more and more risk, it's just never going to end well. But I feel like I'm very, very far from that limit of actual danger. Tu passes 20 grands pas là. Là, on n'est pas dans la voie, on est en dessous du niveau du sol normalement. Je mets les deux cordes. Because it's really, really long pitches, you have to really run out the protections. So 90% of the time, you know, there's a ledge below you somewhere. There are really quite a lot of places where you would hurt yourself if you fell. The first time was a bit of a shock in the system, but I was expecting to get a slap in my face, and I definitely got a slap in my face. I didn't cry, but I was really scared all the time. I reached the AB and I was prepared to fight my way up the AB, and I did fight my way up the AB, and I was petrified. I was petrified on every single movement. I reached the top of the AB, and at first I was like, oh my god, the top is hard. But then I put myself together and realized, actually, I think if I have enough time to figure out the movement, if I get the good weather conditions, I can do that pitch. So at that point, I decided next year is fully focused on the Wapiti.
Quelle heure il est là? On a démarré à 7h. Juste pour voir quelle heure il est là, James?
5 heures.
Ouais, on a quoi? Oh putain, on a passé 10 heures dans la voie déjà? Oui, on a fait la moitié. Il va falloir être plus rapide. Hein.
You don't do big projects like that by yourself. I was the one leading, but I did rely on people. Marion, I mean, she's an experienced mountain guide, and there's about 1% of female mountain guide in France. So clearly, if you're at that place, it's because you had the balls to push the boys. I trust her 100%. She knows everything that I don't know in mountaineering. I don't just trust her, I think we're very good friends now. We've spent quite a bit of time in different situations. She's been pretty much behind all the logistics. She's been the one telling us when to come up to Chamonix and when to make the tries. I had some days where I felt really confident when I would finish a route, or I had some days where I was really low when I would go climbing on slabby granite and fail in a 6C. So I had a lot of ups and downs. But what you learn in competition is to have a goal, train for it, focus on it mentally, and you have this one D-Day to achieve it. And I know I've been able to transfer it to everything I've done, and I'm able to transfer it now to the Wapiti.
The second pitch actually is probably the boldest of the route. 7B plus slab climbing, where for 4 or 5 moves at the end of the run out, you really can't fall off.
I had decided that fear would be left aside, so I had this little box of fear, but it was in a pocket, and I closed the box, and that was it. So I could just climb and focus very well on the movement and not put more pressure than necessary.
Only 11 more pitches.
In the 7B I had a massive fight. I didn't fall, but I got really pumped at the top of 7B. Did the 2 6Cs, no problem. It's at that point I had a bit of a habit. And then it was time for the 8B, and James went above me because we had some statics in place. And he was next to me on the rope, so it was really cool.
She set off up the first section, which is, it's not physically very hard, but it's technically quite demanding. She seemed okay, and then started the roof, and at that point, I could just see how totally, like, physically destroyed she was. Come on, keep on going. Keep on going. Keep on going. Relax, come on. Ali, continue. Go. Ali. Ali. Ali, go. Ali, go. Keep on going. Come on. Relax. Come on. That's secure.
I'm looking out. I had 2 minutes of just not thinking, not being able to do anything, just hanging on my harness.
Montre-moi ta main.
At that point, there's still 7 pitches to go that I didn't know. So at 4 p.m. there's no way I was gonna finish the day. And we had prepared everything for the bivouac.
It's tea time. I think it's 5:30. I'm ready to go to bed. But we have to eat first. And
Drink it.
and yeah, make the snow melt to make some more water for tomorrow.
I definitely think the BV has added a lot to the experience. After all, I'm not doing that for the tick, I'm doing that for the experience. And this is all that matters, and this BV is on the very top of my list of best memories.
I don't think I realized my head was so close from the edge.
I had barely slept, but I've learned from my competition years that even if you don't sleep, it doesn't matter because your body rests. I tired at 8 a.m, that's quite interesting. There were all these little voices telling me I'm not exactly 100%, but at that point, when you've done all the bottom, you can't be like, oh no, I can't do it, I'm too tired. You can't go back, it's just like the fear. You can't be like, oh, I'm giving up.
just did the 80 pitch. It's quite technical and still quite physical at the same time. So now 4 pitch to go. I'm keeping my jaw inside for now, but I need to keep energy. But it's super cool, super cool, and it was so beautiful. Once I had the idea in my pocket, there was no mistaking. I knew I could do it. I knew. When you've done all the Grand Capucin and your last 2 pitches are so beautiful, both the 6B and the 6A, I think Arnaud must have thought he was so lucky because the rock is perfect. One down. Climbing, I think, is not just about climbing, it's about the place that you discover. That's something that I've been discovering more and more since I'm climbing more outside. And I'm definitely not finished. This is a whole world that I had no idea of that. And I would do it again a million times. I just need a bit of rest now, but I would do it again, for sure.
For us, I think it's safe to say nowadays that adventure is basically using climbing as a vessel to go to exciting, unknown places to us.
There's definitely a big dimension, where am I going? And to that you add the climbing.
Yeah.
So ideally the climbing has to have an element of surprise as well.
Yeah, it still is climbing, but climbing comes in so many different forms that you can do something that you haven't really done that much before, or at least feels like something you haven't really done that much before.
So it's
and
the
then
package.
It's super exciting.
It's the package of those two. And
I guess we start with the question of really what makes us dream.
And that brought us on to Japan. But actually, what made you dream on this expedition?
What made me dream on that expedition was Toru, actually. Toru Nakajima, who is one of the North Face athletes from Japan. But Toru is, in my opinion, one of the very best all-round climbers in the world. Able to turn his hand to anything. He's climbed super hard routes, bouldering, sport climbing, tread climbing, multi-pitch, crazy things that you've never even really heard of. And Sawanobori was one of those things that I've never really heard of.
And Toru is really interesting because he's always going against the current.
Exactly.
Literally as well. But he's an North Face athlete from Japan. And at the minute, all of Japan in climbing community is focusing toward the Olympics. In the middle of that river, you've got Toru, who's swimming backwards
basically
entirely.
Going towards all the ancient styles of Japanese climbing and mountaineering, and
talking about swimming backwards, instead of going down a river in the summer, like canyon,
like everyone does all around the world. The Japanese, they try to climb up these waterfalls and rivers, and this is called Sawanobori.
I think usually just bring lots of screw gates.
Screw gate?
Yeah. I'm taking like base layers.
Okay.
I figured this is nice just to have them dry, and then I get out of the wet clothes and we can sleep in them.
Okay.
And we also have food on the ledge.
We see the weather.
Just need the weather, exactly.
That's the important fact. Okay. Alright. I will text you guys what time I'm going to arrive in Toyama.
Perfect.
And we meet there.
の岳は多分日本で一番落差がある。一番上から下まで340メーターの落差があって、日本で一番落差があるっていう滝としてみんなの間で有名で、みんなはそれを見に来るだけだとは思うんだけど、でも日本のその文化的なところで滝っていうのは多分神聖な場所で神が宿ったりとか、そういう特別な場所だと思うので。
So my plan for the trip was pretty simple. I figured we'd come to Japan, we'd try our luck at some, first baby Sawanoboris, and then later on we'd try some other things, practice a little bit more, and then ultimately go on to Shomyo. What actually kind of came to pass was a little bit different to that. We arrived in Tokyo, had no rest, no time to kind of get into the swing of things, so just in the jet lag.
Do we have a piton? No.
And then we're thrown straight into the first practice waterfall that turned out to be pretty hard. Sawanobori as a sub-sport of climbing actually seems to be really varied in itself. You have small boulder problems or mini routes to get up to the next plane of the waterfall. And then you have other Sawanoboris, which are basically like proper routes, sometimes even big walls, up waterfalls. The one thing I remember from that first day is just being absolutely amazed by how heavy, how powerful the water seemed to be. And these were tiny little streams in comparison to the photos that I'd seen in some of the bigger waterfalls. And that's when things start to get really serious.
不動の滝に行ってきたんだけども、まあすごい正直初めての試みなんでめっちゃ怖かったです。いやもうすごいこう空間と岩の悪さとコケコケと水の量と、もうそういったもので、本当普通のクライミングからは想像できないような怖さが常に潜んでいる。でその中でいかにこう自分を冷静に保つかみたいなところが本当にこうすごい難しくて、でも正直なところ自分が一番なんかこう興味があるところは、そこにどういう面白みを見出していくのかっていうところに一番興味があるかなと思っているところだね。
We looked at the weather and it seemed like it was only going to get worse for the rest of the trip, with the possibility even of a typhoon coming in. That meant that we might only have 1 or 2 days to kind of knock this thing off.
I think a lot of this type of climbing isn't about the difficulty. It's not about being as strong as you can. It's more about just being in the elements, being out of your comfort zone, and just being a part of nature, but extraordinary nature. It's really powerful, the places where we've been going, and they stand out more than just like a limestone crag. These are moving places, and they're almost breathing places. We've had our practice on various waterfalls. We feel confident enough to approach Shomyo.
Après, de l'extérieur, je suis sûre que les gens, n'importe qui se dirait, mais qu'est-ce qu'elle fait, n'importe quoi, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont décidé. Ça me paraît pas si différent du milieu de la montagne. De toute façon, quand on se met dans des endroits pareils, on maîtrise pas tout. Et c'est le jeu en fait, c'est le contrat. On a accepté, on se met dans une situation pareille et on est tout petit, donc on essaie de bouger tout doucement, de pas trop déranger les choses, mais on est bien au courant que c'est pas vraiment dans nos mains. Il y a une petite partie de risque qu'on contrôle nous, et puis après, il y a une partie de risque qu'on ne contrôle pas.
So instead of climbing as one big team, we decided to split into two parties, hoping to miss the storms that were forecast for that evening, and we'd all join together on the ledge and, And then we started to look at the weather, and things just seemed to be going from bad to worse.
ギアをもらって、僕もギアを整理して登り始めるんだけど、登り始めてすぐに雨がドワーって降ってきて、もうほぼ滝だよね。滝の状態になってきて、もうなんだろうな、とりあえずそれでも本当危なかったら戻ればいいからとりあえず行こうということで行ってみたんだけど、
The rest of it was good actually. The storm stopped, it dried out a little bit. We arrived on the bivvy just after dark. We settled down into our little house for the night and life was good.
I think we need this kind of spice, during climbing, I think. Yeah. And he looked down at me and he's just like, and I'm like, oh, what? I didn't know that there was a waterfall there. maybe it's like visiting the whole.
Day 2 on Shomyo Falls was really about stepping into the unknown. The only thing that was clear is that we needed to be fast. And we decided for numerous reasons that we were going to try and get across the other side to go up this really nice looking, pretty dry rock slab.
でそのためにはやっぱりこの落ち口の少し細くなってる部分を誰かが飛び越えなきゃいけないっていう風なプランになったんですよね。でそこでジェームズがトールが行けよっていう風に言いまして、信頼を置いてくれてるのは嬉しい反面、やっぱりすごくリスキーですよね。少しこの足を滑らせて、
彼相当緊張してて、すごい怖いんだなっていう。もしあれで落ちてたら滝この後230メーター続いてるんだけど、多分相当難しかったと思う。
The more I see the Japanese climbers, the more I'm impressed by their vision of the sport. They look at things in a completely different way. And it's only through coming here and meeting people and spending time with them and really immersing myself in these kind of cultures, I realised that I'm actually really still closed into my box, and that climbing can take place equally on a waterfall than on, a big wall of perfect, solid, dry rock. At the end of the day, it's all climbing. They're all walls. They're all, a vertical playground for us to explore. And the more we can open our eyes to other people's visions of the world and not write them off as being crazy or silly or strange, the more we can just decide to try things because they're fun and they're enjoyable, the better it's going to be for everybody.
You might not have noticed, but Carol was actually 5 months pregnant during our trip to Japan. I guess it was pretty well hidden under all the Summit Series gear.
But we wanted to become parents. It had taken one big discussion, or
actually a few big discussions. I think in that case I was probably a little bit further behind Carol. I can hold my hands up and probably say I was the selfish one. I was basically happy with our dream life of travelling around the world.
Somehow it was a bit of a routine, and I was more ready for
the next step,
new surprises. I really want to call it an adventure, because I think parenting is a massive adventure in the sense that you'll get surprised and you will have to be open-minded to handle it.
We decided that we wanted to try to make parenthood for us an adventure.
Yeah, we decided we were not going to change our lifestyle.
We had all these ideas about, crazy things that you could potentially do with a baby.
Yeah, some ideas were even climbing multi-pitch, living in a backpack.
Yeah, I'd started to dream of how I could build a harness for him and all these crazy things. And in reality, some of them
into reality.
Didn't quite work out.
The first 3
months
were shit. I just want to be honest.
they were difficult.
This is not now, which was just shit. And we were really careful to not ask each other, was it a good idea or a bad idea?
Yes, definitely. There were a lot of sleepless nights.
But
and a lot of sleepless days, which basically meant not a lot of sleep.
And then I think finally we did go back to the adventure mindset.
I think what actually probably helped us out in the end is that through doing all these adventures, you learn not necessarily to dwell on the bad stuff, because there is actually a lot of bad stuff with adventure. Adventure is not always fun. Sometimes adventure is really sucky.
4 days in a row in a 4x4 in Chad eating dust, that must have
it's not necessarily super fun, but you know that you're going to get somewhere amazing by going through that experience, or at least you hope you are. And I guess we could apply the same sort of mentality to parenting. We were just crossing our fingers that we didn't have some kind of demon baby. And that after 3 months, everyone told us after 3 months it gets better, so we were counting down the days, like scratching off the wall in our prison cell.
So I think there's definitely an element that obviously he grew up and became a great baby, but there's definitely an element that we adapted to our new reality.
It's really a question of your own perspective, and this is something that I think we can apply to all parts of life. Sometimes situations are not exactly what we want them to be, but if we choose to look at them in a different way, we can make them a hell of a lot better.
So on this new adventure, which is parenting, I think nowadays, after this 1-year-old, and we're totally able now to see all the bright sides.
Yeah, I feel like we're pretty much back at where we were before in terms of our fitness.
We're very different now.
Yeah, I guess. In terms of fitness and the things that we can do, we're pretty much back. But what we didn't expect is that there's this whole new level to it all, where
time has become so precious, but it's really good actually, because it means you enjoy every single climbing session.
Focus on those micro moments, because now those little tiny moments are full of so much joy.
And there's this baby, obviously he's looking at the world with his new eyes and marveling at every little grass or anything.
Sunrise or...
And you marvel with him.
Yeah, you realise that the world we live in is
all these things that had become just standard and blasé
cool place.
are just amazing again. So we started with mini adventures.
And eventually we got up to...
Maxi adventures.
Maxi baby adventures. Exactly. So we've actually just come back from our first adventure, our first real family adventure in Ethiopia.
But you're not going to see any pictures or videos just yet because they're being processed by the North Face, and you'll see them in 1 or 2 months maybe.
But for now, we just want to show you some pictures of adventure in general, and actually adventure as a family, because like we already said, adventure is whatever you decide to make it.
And it's a good moment to ask any questions that you wanted to ask. You can see there's a little chat box in the corner.
Yeah, just down there on the right. You can type away and we'll answer the questions together. And if you don't already have a YouTube channel, you're going to need to sign up for one, but it only takes a minute or 2, so you can even do that now. So, there you go, guys. Basically, you've been with us for pretty much 1 hour tonight, and I don't know about you, but time's definitely flown for me.
I'm just really laughing at the questions.
We're trying to go through the questions now to think of the best ones to answer. There's quite a few there, so we'll try our best to answer all of them. But I guess just before we move on to that, we probably wanted to try and finish up this whole presentation thing.
Yeah, I think the main... Why did we want to talk for an hour tonight? The whole thing was the adventure mindset, right? And I think we can all take this lockdown as an adventure. Of course, there are some really nasty, annoying things, like not being able to go on the rock. Way worse, obviously, having people sick.
Yeah, but a little bit worse.
Okay.
All those thousands of people dying.
Ignore me that. But there are some amazing things too, and I think we can all focus on the really good things. So what will you remember of this? Well, what is it, a month and a half now?
Well, basically, we got back from our last expedition in Ethiopia about, 1 or 2 days before we got locked down in France. We were really lucky, actually. During our time in Ethiopia, we weren't following too closely the news, so we didn't really know how things were moving forward so fast. And that's a pretty good thing because we didn't really have to worry. Although we got home and suddenly landed in this strange world where we faced being shut in our house for, at least a month, probably longer. And at first we were like, God, how are we going to deal with this thing? We can't possibly stay in here all this time. We're going to go crazy. And actually, as time goes by, you figure out all these new coping strategies, and you do, like Caroline was saying, appreciate all the little magical things. Like, I think actually we realised that babies appreciate having a little bit of stability in their lives, even if we think it's great for Arthur to be out there in the world doing all these crazy things.
Okay, so that's super personal. But first, the one good side is baby learned to walk.
Yeah, literally. We got home, and about 3 days after the lockdown started, he was already walking. And he's been on the verge of doing it for months and months and months. And I think we were just switching environments too often for him, and there was, so many other things for him to think about. So having a bit of downtime at home for us really helps Arthur to develop himself, and you can see him learning new things every day. So that's really cool. But we're not here just to talk about babies.
On another note, we learned how to do webinar.
We did learn how to do a webinar.
Otherwise.
Well, fingers crossed it's not over yet. So. But I think we're pretty much there.
That was a fair amount of work, but super interesting. Maybe in the future we won't have to fly across the world to see somebody talk for 2 hours.
I think that's one really good thing that can come out of this.
Step forward.
A lot of people are perhaps going to realise that they can do more and more work from home, and obviously less travel, less carbon impact.
Okay, the questions are really piling up now.
Okay,
so
let's go through.
Hold on. There was
read a few of these questions. Oh, there was one right at the beginning.
Filippo had a question about the best expedition we've ever had.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a good place to start.
So I'm gonna answer the last one.
But mainly
But you always answer the last one because it's just the one that's most fresh in your mind.
I've got exactly. I've got a fish memory. Although Sawanobori was great as well, and Reunion Island was great because I was the boss.
Yeah, and obviously she loves being the boss. It's basically like Reunion Island expedition every day at home for us. Except she's only got one person to boss it, well, two.
Yeah, no.
Arthur doesn't listen actually, so just one.
So Ethiopia was great because obviously there was this really important dimension of climbing, but to that we added Arthur, and because we needed somebody to take care of Arthur, we had James' mom and my dad.
Yeah, it was a really cool mix.
And I think it becomes much more emotional because you're sharing really important moment with the people that you love.
Yeah.
So.
For me, I mean, obviously Ethiopia was really special, and I loved being there with Arthur and my family and your dad.
But you wanted to swim and be in the water.
But the way I define my best ever expedition is, if I had to pick one that I could go back and do right now, which one would it be? And in fact, I'd probably go and do all of them right now just to go and do something. But
no, I'm thinking maybe Faroe I would skip.
Yeah, there's a lot of expeditions that in
Faroe Island is amazing, but I would not go to Faroe Island to climb because the rock was terrible and it's raining all the time.
In hindsight, sometimes you take a lot of risks. Sometimes they're just really tough. Sometimes the weather's terrible, and you can have an amazing experience doing things that aren't necessarily that fun, like we already touched on earlier. But basically, the one expedition that I absolutely loved and would love to go back and do time and time again was Sawanobori. Just being there was so crazy, was so different, so zany, so special.
But the crazy thing is how it started, actually.
A bit like Arthur, actually. Like, every day you're learning something new, and every day you're just like, massive eyes and these crazy new experiences and rediscovering the world. Like, honestly, for me, it was rediscovering the climbing world, that you could actually climb on wet rock.
Okay, you talk too much. We have 20 questions, and that's one.
So, Sawanobori, amazing trip. And there were some cool little stories in Sawanobori that we haven't touched on yet, no?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about them, or we not got time, maybe? Maybe we don't have time. We never have enough time.
James,
even in lockdown.
He loves to talk, so he can stay until midnight for those who are really keen.
A personal presentation. Okay, so what are you going to talk about then?
You wanted to answer to that question about being robbed in Chad?
Yeah, that was one of the early ones, wasn't it? That was way back at the start of the chat feed. So when we were in Chad, we did actually get robbed. Well, no, actually, it wasn't robbed. It was like an attempted robbing or an attempted mugging or whatever you want to call it, or murdering. Ultimately, they were kids. They were probably, 14, 15 years old, but it was... Whatever happened, it was still really scary. Basically,
so they had knives?
Basically, we were looking at walls.
I was not there.
We'd walked into this kind of bottomless canyon. You know, it was a really beautiful place to go and look at, and I think quite a few tourists, probably like the 2.5 tourists a decade that go to the Inedi Desert, go to see this place. And so we'd gone in there, one way in, one way out, and basically... we were looking around at these walls, and as we started to walk back out, there were these locals coming towards us, with the headscarves on, and, at first we didn't really think anything of it. We'd seen locals, they'd been nothing but friendly all that time, and then we saw that these guys were taking something out of their belt, and the closer they got, we could see that these things were kind of shiny and pointy, and at that point they started shouting and putting these things in the air and, like, making stabbing motions and pointing at their hearts, and
And you run off.
And basically, I ran off. Yeah. Technically, I was actually away on the other side of the canyon, away from the main group of people, and I could see what was happening. And I think it was Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy shouted across to me, "Go get help!" And I was like, "Oh God, it must be serious." And as I started running, I saw Mark picking up like a big stick, and Jimmy picked up some rocks and stuff, and there was definitely this standoff. But I was already, I don't know how fast I ran, like the 500 meters back to the car, but it was, probably getting on for definitely a personal best. And I got back to the car where our guide and one of the elders from the local village were basically having tea, and I was so exhausted I couldn't speak, and I was just trying to with a knife. And they were looking at me like I was a complete idiot. And eventually I managed to communicate that there were some people with knives attacking the rest of us. So we all walked back into this place. Nobody to be seen. Nobody. Like, empty. And so our guide and the chief are looking at me like I'm a complete nut job.
And I'm wondering, like, oh my God, where have all of my friends gone? Did they already get killed and have they already been buried in the desert? Which would have been pretty fast going. And in reality, what had happened is there was this tower kind of in the middle of the canyon. And as luck would have it, I'd walk one side and the other team had come around the other side. So eventually, when I dragged everyone back to the car, the rest of the team were waiting for us at the 4x4s, probably having tea again. And the guide and the chief looked at me like an even bigger idiot. And then I think we forgot all about that and just got in the car and drove off and climbed some more mega tower. But yeah, told you it was a boring story.
So
but
yeah,
it definitely seemed...
I don't have a watch, but it was an 8-minute answer to your questions.
Okay, so what are you going to talk about now?
It's a little bit weird actually talking to a computer.
Yeah, without actually being able to see any.
So yeah, I'm going to try and be quicker than James for next question.
If you could climb anywhere for the month of September, where would your top 3 places be?
Well, month of September, if you're a girl, you have to be at Grimpeurs. Hopefully it's still happening.
Yeah.
It's an event that we're organizing.
La Capelle, Masmelin, south of France, glorious weather, great wine,
19th
great
of October,
rock.
if I remember well.
Yeah.
Where else in September? I mean, south of France is amazing in general.
Yeah.
French flag.
France. I don't know where I would go. I think anywhere.
I think this is mid-season, so Europe is kind of the best for mid-season.
Yeah. So many cool places. I'd love to go back to the Czech Republic. Actually, we did a chat with Gaz Parody the other night on Instagram, and the two of us were both saying, God, we went to this place in 2009 on the Summit Series road trip. It was the one place on the trip we both said we had to go back to, and neither of us have been. So maybe the Czech Republic. I think it's great in September, October. Amazing sandstone.
So yeah, sorry, not a definite answer on that.
Okay.
David Yawood, we're not even going to answer your question.
Have you climbed anywhere better than Northumberland? It's true, it's hard to beat.
Right. So yeah, was it in Northumberland?
You could probably
The only time, I climbed 2 days. The first day was maybe 4 meters high, and the second day it was pissing down, and it's the only time in my life where I climbed with waterproof trousers and top. Like, because normally this is called Sawanobori, but in the UK it's still climbing.
There you go, Dave. Take Sawanobori back to Northumberland, make it your own.
There was something...
there was another question that...
First thing we're going to do after the lockdown, I think simply go to La Capelle.
Yeah, I mean, probably literally the very first thing, go to our local crag, which is La Capelle. But actually we have a trip that is currently very far down the whole planning line, and we're basically just waiting for the freedom to get out there and travel. So it's this amazing bike climb trip that we plan.
We don't know if it's going to be amazing or horrible.
We think it might be pretty cool.
James.
Along the Danube, so basically starting in the Black Forest in Germany and cycling all the way to Vienna. So it's about 1,000 kilometers.
So my issue is James planned about 50 or 60 Ks per day, and even if we have electric bikes, I've just been training and when we were not on lockdown or when we're doing shopping, and I can't go much faster than 15 Ks per hour usually, so that brings 2 hours of biking.
And mainly she has like a serious problem with the saddle. So we're actually talking right now about maybe getting like an actual saddle for a horse and putting that on her bike and seeing if that makes it any better. Because as we know from the videos we saw earlier, she was horse riding when she was a little girl. And if we can't actually cross borders yet, because no one really knows what's going to happen, then we're going to probably do the same cycle climb trip around Provence. So Saint-Léger, Le Dentil de Montmirail, maybe going down to Buix. We'll see. We're going to try and do something. But to be honest, being forced to do an adventure close to home would actually be a really great thing. Because often we think we have to travel to the other side of the world to have fun, to see something new. But actually, you can discover so much stuff amazing stuff on your doorstep.
Moving on. Sorry, no transition. But Kyle Savage has a really clever question. Are any African countries beginning to embrace the tourism potential for climbing? And my answer, I'm sorry, we're not clever enough to answer that.
Well, mainly I've not been to that many African countries. We've been to Morocco, now Ethiopia.
And it's
Chad.
true, I mean, there's very little awareness of climbing in general. Morocco, obviously, there's definitely a tourism industry. There's plenty of hotels and hostels.
there are some vague topos, and I think people
but
know that
there
climbers
isn't
come,
a
but there's
single Tonsai equivalent.
yeah,
in
there's
Africa,
nowhere to
and-
buy gear
yeah.
for a start, which I guess would be a good start for developing climbing industry. So, from what I know, not really, but there is so much potential.
For sure, it will come.
So much potential.
Yeah. So somebody late to the. Oh, I've lost it.
There was a good question about kids and babies, about your first
2
climbing
months old
experiences.
baby. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Wow.
2
cool.
months old.
Stick with it because it does get much better. Maybe you're a lucky one.
Why are you still awake?
Yeah.
At that time, we would already be like dead.
Maybe you're lucky, and maybe you got a little angel. I wasn't,
Yeah.
very
9 o'clock, if I remember well, we had a
hunky,
plan.
but-
Every evening at 8 o'clock, we would try and go to bed and put baby to sleep, and that would usually last until midnight.
Yeah.
Like failing to put him to sleep for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think so. For the first couple of months, we were just kind of surviving, not really even managing to train that much, just getting through the days. But then after maybe like 2 months, he started sleeping a little bit better, started snoozing in the day, and we managed to start going out to local crags. We went to La Capelle, we went to Roussan and Seine. Sorry, we're laughing at Dave Yoward's questions again. And basically, like little by little, you. I was just saying how great it is when you have your own audience on the chat. You don't get any spam or any stupid comments, but of course, there's still one of our friends from France who's fart. Great. So yeah, back to the baby stories. Little by little is really the key. I think personally learn
So I think
how
his
to deal with the
question
baby.
was, where is the first place we went out? And out was definitely in La Capelle.
Yeah.
Bouldering is just so much easier with baby. And actually, I used to find bouldering boring because you always have, because James doesn't have the same bouldering level than me, you have one person climbing and the other one has to wait, and then you have to move the crash pads to the other boulders. And nowadays, at least, instead of being bored, you can just play with baby. So much better. Bouldering with baby is awesome.
No, it is true that like climbing with a baby in general is really cool, and bouldering is definitely the best, I think, or at least the easiest. You can manage to climb sport routes, but you definitely start to bring this stress element into it, where you need 10 minutes or so to climb your route, and you know that baby needs to be quiet for that 10 minutes, and it doesn't always happen. Whereas bouldering, you don't need 30 seconds to try.
No, but we've developed super loads of techniques for. So we sometimes we tie the rope into a tree.
If you go to a crag with trees around, then you can actually belay off a tree
with a revo, because it's
more secure in both directions.
Secure belay device.
This is not technically official advice from Wild Country, but
it's private.
You don't
just don't repeat it.
You don't even need the belayer to really have their hands actively on the device that much. Just keep it with them, because unlike a gree-gree or something where if the climber pulls the rope, the gree-gree is going to lock. The revo actually feeds out until it reaches a certain speed. So as a climber, you can climb pretty happily pulling the rope through the revo, which is attached to a tree, and the belayer just needs one hand on the rope whilst they're doing something with baby. And if the revo ever locks, then the belayer can release it pretty quickly, and basically you can carry on. So that works relatively well, but it's still
far from ideal.
Yeah.
But
bouldering's actually super cool for all those reasons that Caro said, and many more. It's definitely a good one to do. Okay,
There was another question about baby. I'm just moving on. Essential item for traveling is a baby tent.
Yeah, this is super cool.
Because baby need. If you have a baby, they like routine, and making him sleep in a new environment every night is like the recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So if he's used to sleeping always it's a little tent that you just unpack. We have one from Derian.
Yeah, I think they're a company from the Netherlands.
I'm just going to write it down so you can just look for it.
And we actually got this tip from a couple that we followed, actually a family that we followed on Instagram a while back, and they just had a kid before Arthur was born. And already, I think when the kid was like 3 months old, they were traveling around Southeast Asia for 6 months. And I thought it was amazing, and it definitely gave us a lot of courage for sticking with it and working the way through the hard times. And these people recommended this tent for exactly those reasons, to give the little baby a little routine, and it works so well. Wherever we go, you put this tent down, and Arthur knows it's time to go to sleep. It even works for snoozers at the crag as well. And it just, basically anytime the baby's asleep is a good time for you as parents. So yeah, check out Derian. I think Carol, did you
I did write it down
something?
at the
Okay.
end. I think we're going to take the last question and let everybody go to more interesting stories. Hold on, I lost it.
I thought you could do two things at once.
Yeah, and then clearly I can't. Somebody said he loves me, which is great. That's no question.
No, he says, I love how Carol is
I
so
know,
matter of
but
fact.
it's much better
you
if I
can
say
see what
like
you
that,
want
no?
to see, yeah.
Thank you, Donovan. Yeah, I really like that one.
I love going upstream and following rivers in the mountains, sometimes climbing short bits here and there. Did I do Sawanobori without even knowing it? You exactly 100% did Sawanobori already, so you can tick that one off your life list.
But I mean, it's true. This is Sawanobori.
Yeah.
The first day, this is what we did. We didn't take the rope out.
Exactly. Yeah, Sawanobori, we mentioned it in the video, but basically it started with people just trying to travel between different villages and just following the stream, because it's the place in Japan where it's actually easiest to hike through the jungle, being that there is no jungle in the river. And yeah, actually one of the best days of the trip was the first day. Actually, probably one of the hardest days.
Best day for you and worst day for me.
Yeah, Carol did the 2-hour hike into the base of the river in a wetsuit. Well, we were all wearing wetsuits because the insects were just insanely disgusting.
And I was 4 months and a half pregnant.
And I think completely overheated in the wetsuit and got to basically the beginning of the river and was just like, I can't move, I'm going to just sit here for a while. And at that point we were like, oh God, this is a terrible idea to have brought a pregnant woman on this trip.
So
and
what did they do? They just left me alone for like 2 hours.
I mean, there's not really anywhere you were going to go.
So I sat in the river because it was too hot.
Literally
anyway.
Up to there, no, with your mosquito head net on, and you were just constantly getting attacked by.
Yeah, because there were so many insects, I couldn't actually go outside of the river. Because at some point I was getting cold, but I had to be sat in the river with my mosquito net because I wanted to escape them. So yeah, best day ever.
Yeah. So yeah, you did Sawanobori. That's really awesome, and I think it's something that definitely could be done more often around Europe. Although we're still really looking for a place that fits really well with it. I think it's something to do with the rock type. Volcanic rock maybe is the one to go for, because if it's limestone or granite, it just gets so smooth when it gets polished by water. So we actually did do a little bit in the Azores, some Portuguese islands in the middle of the Atlantic, and I've got a video that I'm supposed to be editing and putting out about that. That's been like 4 months now on the on the editing table. Maybe in lockdown I can find some time eventually. Who knows? Watch this space.
Time is running now. We don't have that many lockdown days left. That was supposed to be the last question.
That was supposed to be the last one.
He can't stop. Look at that. He can't stop talking.
There's a good one. Here's the last good one. Okay, last question. Last question. Will there be a West Coast G's reunion? I liked how you wrote G's.
What's G's?
West Coast Gimps was a film, actually the first climbing film that I was ever in, maybe. Actually, yeah, maybe, or the second, something. Very underground, very cult. I'm not going to find a link for that, but if you go on Google and search, you might find something somewhere. Chris Doyle, West Coast Gimps, USA Road Trip.
Don't watch it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's really great.
I'd like to do a reunion. It would be really, really fun. That was a fun trip. Very fun.
With the babies now?
Wow. Actually, so many of us have had kids. That could be cool. That's a good idea. Good idea, Caroline. She doesn't have them very often, but...
But wife's out, of course. Yeah. Fine by me.
So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for tonight. I mean, we could go on talking forever, but I'm sure you guys are just being polite now and sticking around. You've got much more important things to do. So thank you so much for sitting with us through this adventure. Hopefully you guys have learned something, is maybe not the right words, but at least picked something up. Maybe not forgotten everything, and enjoyed something. And if you do have any more questions, you can obviously reach us at Once Upon a Climb on pretty much all the social networks, although in fact we pretty much only check Instagram, so just don't write to us on Facebook or Twitter because we'll probably never look at it. And
we'll go back to we go to sleep because baby's asleep. Yeah, he's not locked in the basket, Seb. We're not that bad, and mainly he wouldn't be happy and quiet.
He wouldn't be this quiet, no.
So, yeah.
And in the meantime, if you are just craving more Once Upon a Climb Carol James content, like I'm sure most of you are, then you should go look at my vlog, because almost 60 videos that I put out like last year or the year before.
Yeah, please.
And about three people have watched them. So it'd be really nice if a few more people.
Subscribe to James' channel because every time he cries.
I'm sat here in the recommended videos looking at Magnus Midbo, 739,000 views. He's got like 600,000 subscribers, and he's got videos with millions of views. I would really like, if I could have like 5 more subscribers, that would make my week. Probably make my lockdown, actually.
Anyway, bye everybody. Do you know how to turn this off?
I think I know how to turn it off now. Where's the hammer? All right, guys. Thank you so much for all this. It was wonderful spending time with you all tonight. And yeah, here's to the next one. See you later.